Welcome to the Haines Sheldon Museum History Tidbit number 11, May Day Prep, Fire Safety. My name is Helen Alton. I'm the director of the museum, and we've had a few glitches this morning, but we're getting started, or this afternoon, we're getting started now. This week is National Preservation Week. We are joining cultural heritage institutions across the country to take part in May Day, an annual call to action for archives, museums, libraries, and historical societies to improve their disaster readiness, especially in regards to collection care and protection. In addition to navigating the COVID-19 situation, this year, behind the scenes, our museum has been updating our emergency procedures and other policies to prepare for reaccreditation with the American Alliance of Museums. We also thought we would address this theme for this week's History Tidbits. So today we're taking a historic look at fire safety. We'll discuss the origins of the Haines Volunteer Fire Department, take a look at some early historic fires in Haines, and give you a sneak peek at the fire suppression system at the museum. In 1910, the town was incorporated, and just after that, a year later, a big fire in the west end of the town highlighted the need for a fire department in the growing community. Although there were always lots of responders to a fire, the response had been disorganized. On January 13, 1912, the Haines Volunteer Fire Department was established. William Benson was unanimously elected chief. A separate native fire company formed, while the Army post had its own fire hall and equipment, which helped the volunteer fire department during large fires. An excerpt from the Haines Pioneer Press on January 20th, 1912, which is shown here, and this is a blow-up of the article right here, recounts the event and states that, quote, much enthusiasm was displayed at the first meeting, and it is thought that the new institution will grow rapidly until every able-bodied man in town will be a member. End quote. And we'll have the full article on our website under the educational information for this talk. From the 1910s to the 1940s, the Presbyterian mission bell called firefighting volunteers to fires. And this is the bell. And it is one of the oldest non-native artifacts in the valley. It was from 1881, and it was brought in by the first missionaries, the Willards, to call people to church. It was been calling volunteers for 30 years. It called the volunteers in for fires, and the volunteers would arrive pulling homemade hose carts. In 1912, the cable operator at Fort Seward heard the bell and sent a flash to Juneau that Haines was on fire. Haines residents in Juneau heard that their town was partially destroyed. It turned out to be a mistake. Instead of a fire bell sounding, it had been a church bell calling members to Wednesday evening prayer meeting. In the 1950s, the fire number rang in 5 homes. The first person who answered ran to the hall to ring the bell and write the fire's location on a blackboard. Later, a phone tree was instituted, then a portable plectron system was used to tone out calls over a one-way radio. Now let's take a look at some of the historic fires that we have images of in our collection. The first one is the 1916 view of the forest fire on Mount Rapinski as taken from Fort Seward. In the foreground, you can see the Fort Seward Lodge, what is now the Fort Seward Lodge. Although the photo is dated to 1916, we know that there was a massive fire at the base of Mount Rapinski in June of 1915. So this may actually be the 1915 fire. Every able-bodied fireman, soldier, and townsperson was needed to fight the fire over several days. Louis Shotridge, who was the first Native American museum curator in the United States, and he was the curator for the University Museum at the University of Pennsylvania. He was also the grandson of Tlingit Chief Ku Klux, And he was returning to Haines from Philadelphia for his first anthropological expedition to Southeast Alaska. And when the fire broke out, and he was on the ship, he jumped off his ship and rushed to help because he knew, being a local son, what it meant when there was a fire that close to town. The next one is a picture from 1922. On August 16th, 1922, there was a fire on Main Street, and this shows the after effects. These are the ruins of the post office and hardware store. The Chisel building is over here, and it's still in town. And this was the harbor master's office on the right. Finally, in 1935, we have a photo of the fire at the Sullivan Apartments. We're not sure of the location of these apartments and could use any help that any of you could give us to help locate these better, but we have this very impressive image of the fire. We also have objects that record the fire history of our area. This brass nozzle was made by the Powhatan B&I Works in Ranson, West Virginia, and it was used on the end of a canvas hose to direct water onto a fire. And the reason fire halls had very tall towers like the one at the fort was to hang those canvas hoses so they would dry after a fire, because otherwise the canvas, if it was put away wet, would mold and rot and would be no use. Another object in our collection is this fire hat. It was donated in 2018 by the Haines Volunteer Fire Department. It's a modern plastic fire helmet. And the Haines Volunteer Fire Department fought only fires until the 1970s, when the emergency company, now the ambulance company, was formed. A search and rescue company was added in the early 2000s. No longer called out by the church bell, today volunteers carry pagers or radios toned out from a central dispatch with enhanced 911. Fire equipment is systematically upgraded and volunteers are regularly trained. Now, I'd like to show you something behind the scenes, a peek behind the scenes at the fire suppression system at the museum. We use a halon gas system, and halon gas suffocates, it absorbs oxygen, and it basically suffocates the fire by removing all the oxygen. It has no residue and it has no water, so it's really safe for collections. It doesn't harm collections and puts out the fires. So it's a perk to us to have something that won't use water, but it does have a downside, and that is that it is bad for the ozone layer. And so new production of halon suppression systems was banned in 1992. Because our system predates the ban, we're grandfathered in and allowed to continue using it. And halon has become something of a black market item. People love these systems, especially for clean rooms, for computer clean rooms. So there's quite a market in halon. And we're lucky, we do have extra halon. So if we do have what's called a dump of our halon, we have replacements already on hand. We also get regular fire checks every 6 months to ensure that that our system is maintained. I'd like to thank our modern Haines Volunteer Fire Department, as well as the Emergency Operations Center, for their hard work during this COVID-19 crisis. And I'd like to direct you to our website, where we will have some fire safety activities for kids, including this word search, the safety word search. And we'll also have a copy of the 1912 Pioneer Press article. So if you would like to read more about the start of our fire department, you can see that online. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for your patience since we were a little late getting started. And I'll look forward to seeing you at 1 o'clock on Friday, this Friday, for our next History Tidbit, which will be on another emergency topic, meals ready to eat. Thank you.